So when I was a kid, I remember on one occasion walking through my grandma's garden, and something stopped me in my tracks. I panicked. I turned around and ran toward my grandma's house and yelled, "Grandma, a snake, a snake." My grandma came outside with kind of a grin on her face, and she said, "That's not a real snake, Brandon. That's a fake snake. I used that fake snake to protect my garden." And I remember thinking as a kid, how can something that looks so real actually be fake? I thought I saw it clearly, but I didn't. Fast forward a few years, it's probably around the 5th grade for me, I found myself at the eye doctor, and they told me I needed glasses. And I'll never forget the day that I put them on, walked outside, and I asked my mom, "Can you see the branches on those trees? Can you see the words on that sign?" And she said, "Why, yes, Brandon, that's how you're supposed to see. You've been seeing your entire life, just not clearly." And that really stuck with me because the reality is you can look at something every single day and still not be seeing it clearly. And I think the same thing is true when it comes to safety. Many of us are looking at what we call safety, but in reality, some of it isn't real. It just looks or sounds real. So today, I want to invite you on a journey with me, a journey to see more clearly, to move beyond what safety looks like safety, and to begin to recognize what actually is safety. Because my goal for you as you leave here and go back to your teams is simple: that you walk away with a new lens, a way to clearly distinguish between what is real safety and what is misinformed safety. So put on your seatbelt and let's take a journey to discover what real safety is all about. Like any good road trip, I don't want to leave you wondering where we're going. So here, I'm going to share the map with you now. We'll be driving through the world of safety, and every so often, we're going to pull over and we're going to step out. We're going to take a hard look at what's really under the hood of your safety programs. We're going to lay it all out on the examination table like skilled surgeons, not to just diagnose, but to discern. Is this the real thing? Is it resilient enough to withstand an impact? Or is it just dressed up and all hollow inside? Because this isn't a round trip. It's going to be a journey forward, and where we're going is a place where fake safety is not welcome. So let's pull the car over at our first stop and take a look at the most important thing that determines the direction of our entire trip: the definition of safety. Because here's the hard truth. If we get this wrong, if we build our house on a flawed foundation, nothing else we talk about today, or I talk about today, is going to matter. Everything downstream, our policies, our engagement, our investigations, and our metrics won't matter. For over the past 2 decades, I've asked leaders, what is safety? And I'll often get an answer that sounds like this: go home the way you came in, the same way you came in. And far too often, we've defined safety as the absence of something. No injuries, no violations, no reports, no headlines. But absence doesn't mean safety. Absence doesn't mean health. Absence doesn't mean people are okay. And so we're going to move away from what I call the fake safety mindset. We have to start by getting clear on what safety actually is. We have to stop measuring silence and start building strength, because real safety isn't defined by what doesn't happen, it's defined by what is present in your system. So as we have our car parked, imagine kind of reaching over into your glove box, pulling out the dictionary and flipping to section S, and you're going to find the definition of safety we're going to anchor ourselves to today. Safety is not the absence of accidents. It's the presence of capacity. Capacity to fail and fail safely. Capacity that shows up through active, visible leadership, through engaged employees, through real safeguards designed into the work, how work is actually done, not how we plan it, how it's actually done. And to really bring this to life, to make it stick, let me take you back to my very first car, because I think it perfectly illustrates the difference between what safety is and what it is not. So my very first car was a 1991 Chevrolet Cavalier station wagon in gray. My grandpa gave it to me in 1996, the year I started my freshman year at the Ohio State University. And let me tell you, this thing was a beauty. Honestly, I was lucky. My grandpa gifted me the car when it was in still very good condition. The problem is, I had to park it across campus. And I didn't have the motivation or the money to maintain it. Remember, I'm an 18-year-old kid at the Ohio State University. Before I knew it, the front windshield was cracked, the tire treads and brake pads were worn, and the windshield wipers didn't push rain. And here's the crazy part. I drove that car for over 4 years, all throughout college. I drove it through Ohio rain, snow, and ice storms. Not 1, not 2, not 3, not 4, but I drove my Cavalier around town for over 4 years. And believe it or not, I experienced 0 safety incidents during that time. So by the numbers, so by the metrics, by everything we've been taught, including my career, most of my career, I was safe. But let me ask you, was I actually safe? Of course not. I was that 18-year-old kid at the Ohio State University. I wasn't safe. I was actually extremely lucky. And furthermore, my friends and family were passengers in that same car, had been riding in that car for over 4 years. They're all telling me what was wrong with my car. They told me I wasn't being safe, and I didn't listen to them. And if we're going to be honest with ourselves, there are parts of our organizations, processes, equipment, systems that look more like my Chevy than we would ever want to admit. So what do? We stop relying on luck. We start building capacity. We add safeguards. We strengthen our controls. We design systems that can fail and fail safely. And how do we know where we build that capacity? Where do you build that capacity? We engage with our people because they're the ones who see the cracks and the windshield first. So if we're honest with ourselves, this next one's going to sting a little bit because we've gotten really good at looking engaged without actually being engaged with our frontline workers. We put up posters, we send out surveys, we host pizza parties, we run town halls, and all of those things can make it feel like we're doing the right things. But if we're honest, a lot of it is just activities. They can create an illusion of connection, but it rarely changes the work the frontline worker is doing. And that's the real question we have to wrestle with together. Are we just creating activity, or are we actually creating change? Right now, if you went out and asked your employees, do you feel engaged with your supervisor? Do you feel engaged in your work? Do you feel safe to speak up when something bad happens? What would they say? Well, Gallup wanted to know the answer to this very question, and the gap is much bigger than you could imagine. 36% of employees in this Gallup poll said they feel engaged at work. That's roughly 1 out of every 3 people, which means about 6 out of 10 people are showing up to work not feeling truly engaged. And then it gets even heavier. 24% say they feel safe speaking up. That means 3 out of 4 people don't feel comfortable raising their hand, sharing a concern, or even calling something out. It's showing us a real gap, a disconnect between leadership and the frontline worker. And here's what matters. People that don't feel engaged, they disengage. When they don't feel safe speaking up, hazards stay hidden. When hazards stay hidden, your systems aren't going to get stronger. So the question isn't, do we have engagement programs? The question is, do our people actually feel engaged? And then when we think of engagement, we have to ensure we're all talking about the same thing. Engagement doesn't just happen. It's not random. It's designed. I like to think of it as architecture, something that has been intentionally built and reinforced. And it stands on three key elements: build it, believe it, behave it. First, build it. We have to design engagement into the work itself. Not as an extra step, not as a side program, but embedded into work, how it gets done every single day. And engagement only exists in a survey or a meeting. It's not going to be built into the system. So it has to be designed into the work. Second, believe it. Leaders have to genuinely believe the frontline insight matters. Not just say it, but showing it. Because people can tell the difference. If workers feel like their voice doesn't actually influence anything, they're going to stop offering it. And third, behave it. This is where it becomes real. How do we respond when someone speaks up? Do we shut it down? Do we ignore it? Or do we lean in, listen, and act? Because our response either builds trust or it breaks it. So here's the reality. Engagement doesn't just stand on one of these. It's going to stand on all three. If you build it, but you don't believe it, people will see right through it. If you believe it, but you don't behave it, trust will erode. Because all of our response either builds trust or it breaks it. You have to occasionally, but you haven't built it into the system, it's not going to last. Real engagement happens when all three of these things are working together. Engagement stands on the systems that support it, leaders who believe it, and behaviors that reinforce it. Make sense? All right. Now, let's examine one of the more critical employee engagement programs in safety, hazard recognition. Engagement helps reveal how work actually happens. The reality is, hazards exist in every operation. What matters most is how well your organization brings them to the surface. You can't fix the hazards you can't see. The safest organizations build systems that help them by seeing, engaging with the people closest to the work. If you don't engage the people closest to the work, you're not going to bring those hazards to the surface. Now, I'd like to show you a quick video on Tesla's Take Charge program. This is a custom tool that we developed over a number of years that really empowers employees and builds a strong safety culture. It's just one of many things we do by submitting improvement ideas. It's our #1 leading EH&S indicator across the globe. We track submission rate, we track unique participation, and we track action closure rate. So I'm going to show you a quick 1-minute video.
Hi, I'm William with EH&S from Cell Manufacturing, and I'm sitting in front of a blocked pedestrian walkway, and I'm going to show you how easy it is to take charge. There are two options to submitting to take charge, through the QR code or through the Tesla One app. I'm going to go through the Tesla One app right now.
I'm going to open my Tesla One app, open the Resource tab, and scroll down to Safety and Security to find a Take Charge form. Once I make sure my information is correct, I'm going to take a picture of the blocked walkway first so I can save time and pre-fill the form with AI. Alternatively, you can fill out the fields manually and add the attachments last. After I upload the image, I'm going to check the pre-filled fields and see if I need to make any updates to things like category, manufacturing area, or description. It all looks good, so I'm going to click Submit.
It's that easy to take charge.
All right, it didn't work that well the first time we built it. So it took a number of years to get it looking like that, but it's an excellent program. In case you're interested, here's what it looks like on the back end. So when you submit a take charge, employees submit it, which goes through their supervisor. Supervisor or the submitter can then assign actions to that idea, submission idea, and collaborators can be added to that particular take charge to help close the action. It could be like workplace, it could be facilities. If no action is taken, the take charge is escalated up one level of the organization every 2 weeks until it gets basically to the CEO level. Once the action is complete, the take charge action is closed, and the employee is actually notified via email that we heard you, we took action on it, and they get that verification. And then supervisors can also send recognition directly to the employees using the same system, which is really cool. We use that quite frequently. Employees may also submit take charges anonymously. In that case, the take charge is routed up to a supervisor or manager with at least 20 overall reports. So it doesn't just go up like one level, it skips a couple levels to ensure they're protected. So with that, our third stop. So all right, so we've looked at an example of how we can engage our employees. There's something we have to ground ourselves in. Our employees are gonna make mistakes. Safety events are inevitable. They will happen. There's no such thing as zero mistakes or perfectly injury-free workplace. And if we convince ourselves that there is, we have to be super careful, because what may actually be happening is not the absence of events, but the absence of reporting. People may be covering up things based upon how we, the organization, responds to failure. So when you think about safety events, this next point becomes critical. How we respond after an event matters, because when it comes to safety post events, we really only have two options on how we respond. We can either go down the path of blame, shame, and retrain them again, or you can go down the path of learning and improving. You can't do both. Fake safety is always going to choose the first path because it's quick, it's easy, it requires less energy, it focuses on one person, one moment, and trying to fix that person, that individual. But real safety takes a different approach. It steps back and says, let's not just fix the person, but let's fix the problem. Let's improve the system. It looks at the system, conditions, environment that makes that mistake possible in the first place. When something bad happens, all the context matters. Context matters. If you can't say you're learning, while simultaneously blaming. The path you choose will determine your culture, not your safety culture, your organizational culture. And that's why response matters so much. So, as Sidney Decker put it, he's a well-known author and thought leader. The difference between a safe and unsafe organization isn't the number of events it has, but how it responds to the events people report. So how do we learn at Tesla? When we have an EH&S event, it could be injury, it could be a spill or near miss. We conduct an investigation like every other company. In our custom event reporting module we call My EH&S. In order to ensure we focus on the system, we ask 3 questions for every single event. 1, what safeguards existed and worked? 2, what safeguards existed and did not work? And 3, what safeguards did not exist but could have worked? So we answer these fundamental questions for every single event, which drives our actions and our corrective actions. So when we have an event that occurs that meets our criteria for high potential or high potential consequence, we conduct a human and organizational performance-based learning team. Learning teams replace the question with who failed with the question, what can we learn? Our learning teams are typically facilitated by a learning team facilitator, includes 5 to 7 people closest to the work. You don't want to have a bunch of managers in there. You want to have the people that actually do the work, closest to the work in the learning teams. And it's conducted in 2 90-minute sessions. That's a lot of time. But I can tell you, these sessions always yield high value and high learnings and great actions every single time. We also use learning teams to study success. So you can study something where nothing bad has happened, understand why they're successful, identify some system weaknesses during that process, and improve your system before you have a serious event. So it's a great practice if you have the time to do it. So the impact of engagement is real. So a 2026 Gallup poll clearly shows the impact from engaged workers is important. 70% fewer safety incidents. 81% less absenteeism when your workforce is engaged. 3.5 times safer when you have supportive leaders. The impact is real. So moving on to our fourth stop, we have to ask the question, how do we measure all of this? How do we communicate it? Because early on, we've been taught something. We've been taught how total recordable injury rate means we're safe. If that's low, we're safe. Low, days away, restricted, transferred, DART rate means we're safe. And if nothing bad happens, we must be doing something right. And if the numbers look good, we celebrate. But here's the danger. Those metrics by themselves can lead you down a path of misinformed safety. Watermelon metrics refer to performance measurement scenario, or KPI metrics appear green on the outside, so successful, on target, looks great to leadership, but are actually red on the inside. It means you're hiding problems underneath. Let me show you a tragic historical example of what I mean. A picture speaks 1,000 words. This is Deepwater Horizon on April 20th, 2010, a floating oil rig in the Gulf of Mexico. 126 workers on board, a lot of safety rules, 7 years, no lost time incident. But beneath the surface, pressure was rising, alarms were silenced, a critical control failed. And then, tragically, the rig exploded. 11 lives were lost, 134 million gallons of oil spilled into the Gulf. As you know, one of the worst environmental disasters in history. Why? Because the record was real, but the safety wasn't. The metrics look good, the dashboards look good, the posters look good, but when the system was tested, it failed, and that is the difference. Misinformed safety measures what didn't happen. Real safety ensures what can't happen. So let me ask you a real question. Is TRIR actually insightful, or is it a fake snake in the garden? For many of us, TRIR is a scoreboard. It's what we show leadership, it's what we celebrate, it's what we chase. But when you actually look at the data, it tells a different story. A study from Construction Safety Research Alliance looked at 3.26 trillion hours worked. And what did they find? No statistical relationship between TRIR and fatalities. None. Which means this: preventing rolled ankles does not mean you're preventing fatalities. Those are not the same problem. Research also shows that between 96 and 98% of TRIR variation is random. So when your numbers go down, was it improvement or was it luck? And when it goes up, does that actually mean you failed? And here's the dangerous part. Let me ask you honestly, if your TRIR is making your workplace safer, or is it just making it quieter? Because when numbers matter more than learning, people stop reporting, events get reclassified, and suddenly your system looks safe, but the risk is still there. And let me bring it down to one question. Would you rather have 600 ergonomic strains or one fatality? Everyone in the room knows the answer. But here's the tension. Do our systems reflect that answer? Does your current systems reflect that answer? Are we investing money and energy into what hurts us or what kills us? So if TRIR isn't giving us the truth, we have a decision to make. Do we keep refining an outdated model, or do we move forward with something that's better? Because the goal isn't to fight TRIR, it's to outgrow it. That's why moving to ASTM 2920 to measure occupational injury illness is the right move. It represents a fundamentally different view and way to think about safety. Instead of simply counting injuries, it helps us understand risk. It no longer treats paper cuts, rolled ankles, and a fatality as the same thing. Makes a lot of sense. but instead brings clarity to consequence and forces us to focus on what can actually seriously harm or kill someone. It really will shift our attention away from what happened to what could have happened, highlighting potential serious events and exposures where prevention truly saves lives. It also moves the conversation away from blaming people toward evaluating the system by whether safeguards were in place, whether they were effective, and whether they truly protected us or we were just lucky in that case. That's why it matters, because it aligns our effort with reality. Instead of asking how many injuries we had, we start asking, were we exposed to serious harm? Where are our safeguards and where are they weak? Where could we actually lose someone? And that's a different conversation, and that's a better one, because we do not prevent fatalities by counting injuries. We prevent them by identifying and controlling conditions that make that possible. This is not just a metric change, it's a mind shift from counting outcomes to building capacity. Strengthening safeguards, designing work so people can fail and fail safely at work. Because the goal is not to lower the number, the goal is to make the system stronger. And if we get that right, the numbers are going to follow. For years, the industry has been shouting for a more meaningful metric, a more reliable means for measuring and monitoring safety performance. Here it is. Okay, before I go, I want to leave you with some reflection questions and actions you can take with you, help your organizations learn and improve. So these are questions you can ask yourself as leaders, or you ask your organizations. Is my definition of safety based upon low incident rates or real capacity? Am I creating a real engagement or just pushing information? When things go wrong, does your organization blame or learn? Am I measuring what matters or what didn't happen? Am I building true capacity, or am I just managing appearances? And then there's specific actions you can take. I definitely recommend reviewing your organization's definition of safety. What does it say right now? Is the definition around building capacity through safeguards and controls versus not measuring what didn't happen? Consider implementing hot-based learning teams when you have high consequence events. Verify your engagement programs follow the build it, believe it, behave it model. And then finally, consider adopting ASTM 2920-26 as your safety metric. Avoid dependence on those dangerous watermelon metrics. I think that's all I have. Open for questions. Thank you.
So thanks for the presentation. They're very interesting, very different way of seeing it. Just a question regarding ASTM 2920. So since when Tesla have adopted that versus TRIR?
I would say it was about relatively new. I think 2 years or so. Might be a little bit longer than that. The new version of it actually was released in February, so you can actually download it right now, for example, on ANSY's website. I think it's like $83, but yeah, so it's changed. We're in a second version of it, and we've been following it, but the new version is actually improved. Like one example, they used to call lacerations less than 2 inches a ASTM recordable, but now they've changed that to say it's only going to be lacerations 2 inches or greater, so you're not focusing on small things, and you're focusing on things that actually kill people. So they keep improving the standard as well. Yeah, I mean, we're seeing, interestingly, we're seeing a really good improvement on serious injury rates going down. So we're seeing much less serious injuries over time. And actually with our Take Charge program, interesting correlation, this is a global one we found. The more Take Charge submissions we've seen, so the more people submitting, our ASTM injury rates are actually going down over time. So, which has been pretty cool to see that come together from like a global perspective.
Thank you for the presentation. Just a quick question. As you look at ASTM and changing over from TRIR to ASTM, does that mean that you're not submitting logs to OSHA, or does that process still continue?
Great question. So basically, every event that comes in, we classify it. We have a workplace health team that does a classification. We classify it in accordance with OSHA record-keeping standard, and we also have a separate section for ASTM. So we still have to maintain the OSHA record-keeping, but in terms of TRIR and DART rates, our leadership does not see those numbers. They only see ASTM. That's our lagging indicator. So yeah, we're going to continue to comply with OSHA, but it doesn't necessarily mean you should let that number drive your decision-making in your organization.
Thank you. Also an OSU alum, class of '92. How has bringing in additional automation to your workplace affected what you do from a safety perspective? How are you handling machinery guarding as you bring cobots and other types of automation into your organization?
Yeah, obviously, you can eliminate or engineer out some of the more traditional hazards with automation, but obviously at that point you need to have a really good equipment safety program, starting at FATs at the suppliers and manufacturers of the equipment, all the way to having a very robust equipment safety buy-off process with very discrete checklists from power on to initial operation to actually handing it over to the operations and the frontline workers. So I think having that checklist and that process flow is a really key part of how we're controlling the risk with overall good improvements in manufacturing, but obviously they bring their own inherent risks.
Hi, Dimas Corral from Ford of Mexico. Thank you for your presentation. I have two questions. First one, how do you promote or recognize the risk assessment process? Second one, how do you confirm that the controls that resulted from an incident stay in the process? Because sometimes we put a lot of controls, but later on, 2 or 3 years later, we are losing or relaxing some of the controls.
Yeah, on your first question, I think we've recently integrated the energy wheel for hazard recognition, which I would recommend looking at. So we started new hire orientation so people understand the basic concepts. Then every worker understands, even the frontline workers, that if there's a standard work instruction, there's an underlying job hazard analysis. So they understand what tools we're using. We educate them on that, and then through monthly safety topics, kind of educate them on the process. And obviously, if there's any change management, you want to make sure your frontline workers are involved with EH&S and operations to ensure that they have a say in the change and how the work is done. So I think that process overall is how we kind of educate and inform people about our risk assessment process. Can you repeat the second question, if you don't mind? Yeah, so safeguard validation. Yeah, so we would do, honestly, physical inspections of things. So obviously, something happens, you do a learning, you have great corrective actions. They're closed in the system, but we actually go out and audit and field verify that. And then also would suggest 6 months later going back out again and looking at the similar systems again. And often you'll unfortunately find something that has changed without proper MOC. And then you have to go back and, you're catching it. But you have to have some process of continual inspection and verification of your safeguards.
Brandon, that was fabulous.
Very
well
good.
done. Congratulations.
Thanks.
Thank
Appreciate
you so
it.
much.
Thanks,
I think
everyone.
another round of applause for Brandon. Well done.